Story about the high beams.
A woman was driving down a highway one night when she noticed a pair of headlights approaching her car very quickly.
The car then passed her off and then suddenly swerved right back behind her.
She got extremely nervous and kept an eye on the car behind her.
The car then pulled up to her bumper to bumper and began flashing their high beams. The car continued to follow her very closely and kept flashing their high beams on and off. The frightened girl struggled to keep her eyes on the road because she couldn't stop looking at the car behind her.
Finally, the woman approached her exit, but the car still followed her and continued to flash their high beams on and off.
The girl then took out her phone and dialed 911. She then told them that a car was following her, flashing their high beams.
The woman gave her address, and within a few minutes, she saw the red and blue lights in the distance.
She let out a sign of relief as she pulled into her driveway, but suddenly the strange car also pulled into her driveway and began blinking its lights like a maniac. The police car then screeched to a halt, and two officers jumped out with their guns drawn.
They then pulled the man out of the car, and they then handcuffed him. But the handcuffed man began screaming, "There's somebody in your car! There's somebody in your car!"
The two police officers then pointed their guns in the direction of the girl and fired.
The woman screamed, but when she turned around, she saw the bloody corpse of a murderer fall out of her back seat.
There was a large butcher knife still gripped in his dead cold hand. The police searched her back seat and found duct tape, a blindfold, and a pair of handcuffs.
The woman then realized that the man in the strange car was actually trying to save her.
When the police released him, he explained
that as he pulled up behind her car, he saw a man with a butcher knife raising it up behind her.
And just as the madman was about to stab her, he flashed his high beams and the figure crouched back underneath the seat.
He said he flashed his high beams every time he saw the man raise the knife.
This is the scary story about the high beams.
This TikToker was found dead on the road. Alexis Sharkey was known for doing videos on TikTok. A few days ago, her husband, who she did videos with, called her mom and said she went missing. Alexis was then found on the side of the road naked and dead. A lot of people believe her husband did it because they were going through marital problems and soon about to divorce. Even her friends believe so.
I looked at her and I was like, she's petrified. This girl is scared for her life.
Her husband denies any wrongdoing. One time she even jokingly put up a video saying her husband is capable of killing somebody. What do you think? Comment below. This TikToker was found dead on the—
What's the most fucked up thing you did in a sleepover? I got my first period at a sleepover, and lucky for me the first year of periods came with wicked vomiting and diarrhea. So in the middle of the night, right after everyone fell asleep, I destroyed my friend's bathroom with a volcanic amount of diarrhea. Then on my way back to the living room where 5 preteen girls were crammed, I proceeded to vomit directly between 2 girls sleeping. I had to ask the mom for help with cleaning up the mess. We were all like 9 or 10-year-old girls and everyone else had fallen asleep except for me, so I decided I would play a prank on them. I got up and shook a good amount of black pepper into my hand and went to several of the girls and held it under their noses. What I was thinking would happen was they would wake up sneezing and be like, hey, that was silly. But instead they ended up waking up crying because they inhaled pepper, and turns out black pepper being inhaled into a sensitive orifice can really fucking sting. The girls cried so hard that my parents woke up and I had to explain the whole innocent idea behind my scheme. I felt so bad. So I have a history of sleep talking / walking issues, and they're especially heightened when I'm stressed. I don't like being away from home, so sleepovers are a recipe for disaster for me. Lo and behold, I woke up one morning after my first sleepover to the horrifying news from my friend that I started sleepwalking, yelled karate chop over and over, and proceeded to ruthlessly swing my arms into my friend's stomach, effectively waking her up out of dead sleep. We were 8. This was the first time I slept over her house, and I had never told her about my sleepwalking problems. She still makes fun of me about it to this day. Was pretty young, but I shit myself while I was sleeping and hid the underwear under my homie's bed. What's the most—
You won't believe what creature was living in his body. Nan is a 56-year-old Chinese man who went in for a special spa service where you submerge your body in this tank with thousands of eels and they're supposed to pick off the dead skin. But as Nan was enjoying his spa time, one of these really slippery creatures started to go into his you-know-what down there. And he jumped out of the pool and he tried pulling it out, but it was so slippery it went poof right up inside him. By the time they got to the hospital to do emergency surgery, it had gone all the way up into his bladder and they pulled it out. And it was 6 inches long! You won't believe what creature was living in—
What is the most cruel thing a family member has done to you? Oh boy, here it goes. When I was about 20, my cousin Julie announced that she would be getting married. My mom came to me and tearfully explained that Julie wanted me to wear our recently deceased grandmother's wedding dress, a pink tea-length dress, so that it would be like a part of my grandmother was at the ceremony. It had to be me because my grandmother was very slim and I was the smallest person in our family. I agreed. I tried on the dress and it was too tight, way too tight. My mother told me to starve myself and don't put a single thing in that mouth. Nay, did. I starved myself stupid for 3 months. I was sickly pale, had dropped about 20 pounds from my already slender frame and had constant headaches, but the dress fit. My mother kept telling me how great I looked. We flew to the wedding. My family lives across the country. Everyone was shocked at my appearance but said nothing. The day of the wedding came and I appeared in my grandmother's wedding dress. I thought people were acting strangely towards me, but I didn't think too much of it. I found out later that Julie had not asked for me to wear the dress. She knew nothing about it. My mother had been telling people that I was on drugs. Not true. To get attention and sympathy, she convinced me to drop weight and show up to Julie's wedding in my dead grandmother's wedding dress to show everyone how drugged out and unstable I had become in order to get more attention and sympathy. I lost 20 pounds in 2 months and showed up to my cousin's wedding in our dead grandmother's wedding dress because my mother is a liar and a sociopath. What is the most cruel thing a family?
You won't believe who this guy dated. Yuma is a 25-year-old from Japan who was in love with Lisa, but he fantasized about being with her forever. But the problem was Lisa was a cockroach. Even weirder, when Lisa died after a year of their relationship, he decided to eat her because he said he wanted her to live with him forever. You won't.
Serious. People who have accidentally caused the death of another person. What happened? When I was younger playing Xbox whilst at my grandparents' house, I had left the room to go to the bathroom, leaving my wired controller on the floor. I suddenly hear a thud and decided to finish my business before seeing where it had came from. Whilst cleaning up, I heard a scream from my grandma and was told to stay in the bathroom. And so I did. Found out that my grandfather had accidentally stood on my controller and fell over the wire, cracking his skull open on the table, and was announced dead at the scene when the ambulance arrived. I am now extra cautious with where I leave items, encouraging my younger brother and sister to clear up their mess once they're done. When I was 18, I was working the night shift in a nursing home as an aide. Part of my job was to turn the paralyzed patients every 2 hours to make sure they didn't get bed sores, etc. This one particular resident had late-stage Parkinson's diseases and her muscles and joints were stiff and brittle and she was catatonic. As I was flipping her from one side to another, I applied light pressure to her leg to move her back a bit, and this snapped her femur. Given her age and health, the doctors decided that surgery was dangerous and she would have to heal on its own if at all. Because of this, we could no longer flip her, which resulted in bed sores. She eventually went septic from those bed sores and died of septic shock. I always felt so bad about that. When I was 4 years old, my mother was roughly 3 to 4 months pregnant. One day I was supposedly crying and throwing a tantrum over a toy or something. My mother tried to comfort me by cradling me in her arms and take me to my room, which was up the stairs, but I cried and kicked so much that she lost her balance and fell down the stairs. I was unhurt and mother recovered without any lasting injuries, but my sibling died. I'm not. Doctors have Reddit. What's the biggest case of faking it you've ever seen? Taking trauma call during surgery. Residency had a prisoner come in after a fight and claimed he couldn't move or feel his legs. All the CT scans and MRIs were normal, but we would shield his legs so he couldn't see them and poke them with needles and other sharp objects with enough force to cause pain. He never flinched or moved his legs at all. He was diagnosed with severe spinal cord injury without radiographic abnormality. He stayed in the hospital for a week, no improvement. Always had one guard with him. One night they were down in the lobby watching some television, but the guard needed to use the restroom. The patient said, "Where could I possibly go? I'm paralyzed." Guard left him alone for 2 minutes. Patient last seen sprinting down the road, naked, butt cheeks flapping in the breeze. Made it to a city 4 hours away by car before he was caught again. I have never seen anyone fake it so well. Truly playing the long con. Doctors.
Story time on how I caught my sister giving my husband head, so I made both of them drink my pee. Okay, so a quick rundown. At this point, I was married to my husband for 2 years, but we've been together for 5. I obviously knew my sister my whole life, but she was always known to be easy or loose, if you catch my drift. Everyone in the family knew this, but we looked past her thoughtism. So anyways, it's Christmas Eve and we're having a family get together, so there's a lot of us there. Let me make this clear. Me and my sister were close and me and my husband were on great terms, so it's not like I could have seen this coming. So the Christmas Eve party started in the backyard so we can bring Christmas in together, and everything was pretty normal. I did see my sister being a little bit too friendly, a little bit too flirty, but I just thought that was her thoughtism coming out. I thought nothing of it. I didn't think they would stoop that low. Oh well, they stooped, bitch. Life of part 2. Story time on how I caught my sister giving my husband.
A missing plane landed after 37 years and you will not believe what happened, part 2. So the air traffic controllers at the airport in Venezuela were just settling in for another normal day, and suddenly they noted the presence of a strange aircraft entering the airspace. But they were very confused because the aircraft wasn't picked up by the airport's radar. They could see the plane with their eyes, but according to the radar, it wasn't there. But then all of a sudden, air traffic controllers received a signal from the airplane. The pilot yelled, "Where are we? What is going on?" And before I finish this video, please consider following me because I post videos like this every single day. The control person said, "What flight are you?" The pilot revealed that it was the flight from New York to Miami that took off in 1955. This incredible announcement stunned the controllers in the tower because this means that the plane was in the air for 37 years. The scary thing is that the pilots thought they were on course, and for them, only a couple hours had passed.
What's something fucked up you witnessed as a child that you were oblivious to until you grew up? When I was 5 or 6, my mom used to never want to get out of bed and just kept saying she was sick. Finally my stepdad took her to a hospital, where she stayed for nearly a month. I thought it was so cool that her hospital let her do arts and crafts all the time, plus she got better and started doing arts and crafts with me too when she got home. I remember telling her that I wished I could go to the hospital and draw all day. She sat me down and told me that she hoped I would never get sick like she did, but if I do, there's nothing wrong with needing help to get better, even if you have to go somewhere for a little while to do it. It wasn't until I was probably 12 or 13 and didn't want to get out of bed myself that it clicked that the hospital she had gone to was a mental health hospital. But because of her, I've never felt shame about needing therapy when things are getting bad, or even just to maintain a healthy mindset. When I was probably around 4 to 6 years old, I used to walk my grandma upstairs at her house every time we visited. She said she liked holding my hand. When I went to her room, she'd always compliment my shirts and be like, "What's this on your shirt here called?" And I'd say, "Oh, that's Winnie the Pooh," or whatever I was wearing. And she'd go on to tell me stories about the character or talk a bit about it. When I was 16, I learned she'd been blind for years. She'd ask me to hold her hand up the stairs so that I could help guide her to her room. She'd ask what was on my shirt because she could feel a pattern on it. I don't know why, but that kind of made me feel both sad and very loved. Like she couldn't see anymore, but she never wanted to let me worry about it and still managed to compliment what I was wearing all the time. She passed away while I was still very young, but those memories stuck like glue. Town I grew up in had these 2 car dealerships on opposite sides of town, one Chevy, one Ford. They were bitter rivals, attack ads, shit-talking salesmen, billboard wars, you name it. When the owner of the Chevy dealership died, it came out he'd also owned the Ford dealership by way of a shell company. No one saw that coming, including a lot of the higher-ups who worked at the dealerships. My grandfather's funeral. He was always a fairly reserved and distant father as far as I understood.